Thank you so much for another opportunity to speak into your life. My name is Marcus Lett, and welcome aboard to the Coach's Corner. We surely appreciate all of your support. We want to make you aware of our new home, our new website, but we also now have a new for your life, in your life, throughout your life, then this 30-day series is the campaign for more for life. All right? And so if you want some great material, I strongly suggest that you go back and you download the previous days and listen to them intentionally, as well as take notes. Because there's some great stuff like you can't have change without change managers and advisors. One of the things that I want to say up front that I haven't said is that, and I think I might have mentioned it, is that oftentimes we are challenged to change through other change agents, whether they be circumstantial, whether they be the human interface or the fellowship thereof of the human experience. Often we have been affected by change agents, and that's really where you want to be anyway. You want to be where you affect change and you challenge and provoke change and bring people to desire better, discipline for better, and be determined to be better. But once again, as we talk about the For More for Life campaign, also don't forget you can download these podcasts. For those that are listening on the podcast platform of Spreaker.com, you can download. For those that are listening to or watching, I want to say listening because we're not simulcasting the Coach's Corner show during the week, only on the weekends. But if you are listening on other platforms, we want to encourage you also to, for instance, YouTube. I had failed to mention that we're on SIBN Atlanta. So if you go to youtube.com/user /SIBN Atlanta, the Coach's Corner, along with other content that is on the podcast platforms, are back to back. And so if you have a smartphone and you're not really tech savvy, you want to be able to access a lot of the material, you can by all means listen via YouTube, which is generally on every phone, despite the platform that it may be. So you can listen right there at YouTube. SIBN Atlanta is the channel name. I haven't been putting that information out like I should, and I apologize. Again, if you want to download, also the best times to listen is when you're it's best to listen intentionally, but it's also best to listen unintentionally. For instance, when you're washing dishes or preparing a meal or preparing to go to bed. Or if you can download them and put them back to back, or if you subscribe right there on iTunes. Many of you know that we're on iTunes. We see the worldwide analytics that suggest to us that people are listening. A great percentage are listening on their iPads and iPhones. So you can listen during those times where it would seem to be unintentional in your listening, and you would be able to absorb more. And also, we also suggested to you that when you do listen to the podcast, that you listen more than once. most of us don't realize that we only retain a fourth of what we hear for the first time. And so it's essentially, if you valued what we had to share, particularly in a series such as For More for Life, then you should go back and listen again and take notes. And then don't forget, the purpose of taking notes is not just to write down what I'm suggesting, but also thoughts that will come to your mind from having been engaged in the process of thought creation regarding the topic at hand. But getting to the power of the momentum, as you can see through the things that I've just announced to you, that over a period of time we are building momentum ourselves in the dissemination of wholesome and positive digital content. And the whole purpose is to empower you and to find inroads into your life that we want to earn. We want to earn the right to speak into your life and to challenge those areas that we have ignored, that continue to erode the plausibilities of where we could maturate to. If we could talk about the bear in the room that no one wants to talk about, but when you start talking about momentum, I mean, that can be, I may cover that for a day or two, but that is a very, very big subject. You think about a vehicle and how long it takes to get up to speed, and whether or not it is light or heavy, and whether or not it is impeded by either the law with stop signs and street signs, or whether it's impeded by the elements, the wind, the sun, the rain, the snow. But when you look at the linear momentum is what I'm talking about now, or classical mechanics momentum, you think about all those things: aerodynamics, tire inflation, torque, and on and on and on. These things all play a part in, I want to say, linear or classical mechanical momentum. But there's a momentum in our own lives that we must monitor. And too often, more than not, when we quit or when we change, not to say that we shouldn't be flexible, but too often, more than not, we have too many things in too many fields. Too many things in too many fields. That doesn't work, so I'm not going to try to sell this. And that doesn't work, so now I'm going to go and start this. And that didn't work, so I'm going to go. Because we're in our culture now, we're a bit impatient, and we don't particularly like for things to take long. We're not into the birth of anything. We just want to have it and have it now. We're not into the labor of it. We're not particularly into the waiting of a dream. We want it, and we want it now. And often times this means that momentum hasn't had a chance to build. It kind of reminds me of the big cars. When you look at the old movies, you look at the big cars, and boy, they look like it take up a half a block. Or you look at some of the older boats versus the old yachts versus the new yachts, and you wonder, okay, what happened? But the progression of thought processes regarding boat shipyards and beyond took into consideration all the impedance factors. They took into consideration all the factors that slow or minimize the momentum, for instance, of a yacht. They took weight into consideration. They took the ability for easy navigation, the control room, the engine room, the decor. All of these factors served in the minds of the architects for newer yachts as impedance factors that could impede the ability of a particularly fast, desiring a fast yacht from being fast. And so we as humans, as we want more for life, we have to consider what are the impeding factors that prevent me from getting enough steam behind my change. What are the impeding factors? And we all have them. We all have impeding factors that could prohibit, plausibly and possibly could prohibit our ability to change. Even though we may sit there and have the answers on how to change, one of the things that I used to love to do is to sit and talk in two dimensions. Dimension one is the plausibilities and the possibilities of what we can accomplish should we put our minds together, resources and energy, and also look at the causation of what would oppose us. But then the other conversation is looking at all of the hypotheticals of impedance, those things that would not only oppose us, but those obstacles that are guaranteed to be stumbling blocks in our way, you see. And so for those who really want change, they have both conversations. It's not enough to have a conversation about the plausibilities and the possibilities of what we can accomplish should we decide to put our minds together, our resources, our heads. It's more important to also have the balance of the conversation, which is, let's talk about what will arrive that will hinder us, our limitations, our inabilities, our deficiencies. And see, this determines the maturity of a project. And this is one of the things that I personally and professionally I wrestle with this, because today we meet a lot of people who have the first conversation. And so momentum begins to pick up based on the plausibilities and the possibilities and the resource, the pooling of our resources and the pooling of our energies and the pooling, of our skill base, and all of that, and education and all of that. And then all of a sudden, momentum is halted because the other half of the conversation was never held. The same way within relationships. Same way in the relationships. Relationships flatline because we have the blissful conversation in culture and in families. Falling in love, having and finding a husband or wife, having and finding a compatible partner, having compatible sexuality, all of the blissful things of the peripherals of a relationship, but we never talk about the things that can go wrong, the bad things that happen, children getting on drugs, parents losing their jobs, banks stealing and changing data, and folks losing their homes, as I've heard recently in the news. We never talk about the negative, the opposing factors that can impede hurricanes that redefine coastlines, gas prices that cause you and prevent you from going out and looking for a job, even though you now have a car that's paid for. I need some help right there. You see what I'm saying? So we have a half of a conversation and we wonder why we don't have change. We have a half of a conversation in our relationships. We have a half a conversation in our business models. We have a half a conversation in our political pursuits. We have a half a conversation in our church groups. Why? Because the human mind does not want to engage the whole pie. It is more likable for me to engage myself in plausibilities and possibilities, because the chemical receptives and the feeling that I receive from engaging in that conversation satisfies me. But that's where, for those of you that are listening that may be Christians, that's why Paul, who had the balance of the conversation, had both halves, could say, I glory in tribulation. Why could he say that? Because he always looked at both halves. He looked at the plausibilities and the possibilities of what the gospel could do, but he looked at the realities of the fact that the Jewish people of his day would not receive it unless they had a special agent who were able to condescend from their educational academia accolades, if you will. Paul saying, I count all things as dung that I may win some. I need some help right there. He knew how to set aside what he accomplished through plausibility and possibility thinking, and he knew how to condescend to the reality of his day and hold discussions and engage people to the degree that he was able through his ministry to overcome extreme obstacles, only because he he knew the power of momentum always include two conversations. Conversations about the positive, if you want to put it in plain words, and conversations about the negative. And in today's society, as soon as something negative happens, we write people off, we get rid of them, or we're too quiet to speak the truth, or we have to be quiet because the defenses are so high now in our society, in our culture, in our families, in our communities. I mean, you can't say anything without someone jumping on defense. You can't say anything without somebody jumping down your throat, thinking that you're accusing them, thinking you're indicting them. Deflection is the rule of law in our relating to one another now, to where now I can make you feel like it was you, when really your suggestion regarding me was to help me, but now I deflect it over to you. I mean, we are experts at hypocrisy, as I've said before, and we have taken on pretentiousness as the rule of relating and the rule of living. And pretentiousness was never meant to be a lifestyle. It was never meant to last a lifetime. It's only temporary. It's what we do to survive. And it impedes momentum at best. It impedes it. It impedes momentum because you're not integral in the process. And that's another conversation all by itself. The integrity of the process means I engage both negative and positive, which I've told you in the past that negative and positive brings power, it brings productivity, it brings influence, it brings impactful results. You try to go down the street with your car without the negative and positive posts together on your battery, you will have no power. And those of you that are out there that are mechanics understand even more so the dynamics and the science behind that. But psychologically speaking, psychosocially speaking, we run from the negative. And so therefore now we have a culture of folks that don't know how to resolve conflicts, because if you're going to maintain momentum, if you're going to overcome the elements, if you're going to overcome the lack of design efficiency, you know, when I think about those older yachts and those older cars, you see, and you look at the newer cars today, you see, and you look at the efficiency levels and the scientific thought patterns that have changed over the last 20, 30, 40 years, the evolution of a mind that's willing to engage all fronts, both negative and positive, means that this ensures, this is when you have these conversations on both sides of the table, when you talk about risk factors, when you can talk about what the probability of things going south and going wrong would mean, when you talk about the debt that you may incur and the risk that you may take, then you qualify yourself integrally speaking. And on the level of integrity, you qualify because that means you do not fear the known fact that there is more than one conversation to be had about any one venture. There's more than one conversation to be had. We can't just talk about all the good. We can't just talk about all the nice. And relationships stall like this. They stall out, they flatline. They flatline because no one wants to talk about the hard issues anymore. But you can't build momentum in anything unless you have two different conversations. It's the same way with God. It's the same way in every aspect of life. There are two different conversations you have if you're going to be a Christian. There's the conversation of the principles of the Bible and the promises and all the great gooey stuff that makes you feel great if you are a Christian, or if you are in dire straits and want to be a Christian. But there's another conversation that we don't like to have. That's the conversation of statutes and the violation thereof, and judgments and wisdom that comes by sorrow, and knowledge that really makes you arrogant. We don't like to have those conversations, and therefore we impede the truest nature of momentum in various projects and various communities, and even in the culture that we end up building through multi-generational interaction. We finally get now where we have a temporary solution to more permanent problems. temporary solutions to permanent problems because we don't know how to build momentum. The first rule of building momentum, in my view, is you have to have a dual conversation, not at the same time, but you must have a dual conversation. For those of you that are doing things that you shouldn't do, you got to have a dual conversation. You know, it's a couple of songs out there that illustrate that, you know, I can't do without my Mr. Wrong, you know. Don't want to call any names, but I mean I like the groove and everything. But the song really has a dual conversation. And we have a duality of situations in our life 24/7 really, but we accept one side and deny the other, and we engage one side and turn off the other, and you know, and it leaves us lopsided in life, and we wonder why there's not a persistent progression of growth in our lives. A systematic progression of growth in your ability to relate, your ability to connect, your ability to increase, your ability to flow in other circles, your ability to engage a global market, if you will. See, because we don't want to have two conversations. We only want to stick to the stuff that makes us feel good, and then when the crap hits the fan, we want to complain that, oh, they're being negative, and I can't take any negative vibes, and I try to stay away from all the people that rub me the wrong way. Well, you know what? If you're really going to grow, you're going to have to be rubbed the wrong way. If you're really going to grow, you're going to have to be offended. If you're really going to grow, you're going to have both the good, the bad, and the ugly. No one grows under complete sunshine. I need help right there. No one grows under a cloud of consistent rain, because then you'll have flooding that will wash away the elements and the ingredients that help hold the roots in place. I need some help right now. No one grows under consistent consistent threat. We must have security. We must have wholesome environments. You see. Talking about maybe perhaps something like domestic violence. No one can grow under a consistency of one thing. You have to have the balance of both good and bad. Your bad experiences teaches you that I want better, and your better experiences teaching you I want best. You see, but we flatline as it regards to momentum, and we wonder why we don't have change. We wonder why we don't have change. Change you can believe in. And so as you campaign for more for life, I want to encourage you that if you're going to build momentum in anything, it doesn't matter what it is, you got to have two conversations. And I don't suggest that you have them at the same time, because when you start mixing good feelings with bad feelings, unless you're highly skilled and personal discipline is rated high on your chart regarding your emotional management abilities, your coping skills, you're gonna be in a storm. You have them separately, respectively, and at various intervals. See, you know, marriages today don't want to discuss real issues that, you know, a lot of issues that affect marriages and families and communities today are coming from the outside in. They have nothing to do, it's nothing personal, but they come from the outside in, because inside of those homes and inside of those marriages and inside of those communities, there's something that the outside wants to connect to, that it relates to. I always go back to, you know, the question that women used to say, well, why can't I attract a better man? Because there's something in the inside of you that detracts him from you and attracts the opposite to you. So check yourself before you wreck yourself. We can't, and always remember now, in the power of momentum, I am the common denominator to my issues. I'm not saying I didn't say I'm the solution to my issues for y'all religious folks that are out there that's about ready to trip out and fall off the radio. I said, in the light of my life, in the scheme of things, I am the common, in other words, when I look at the common thread that runs through all of the issues that I face and I am engaged with from day to day I find that I am always involved. And if you're not involved, I could go one step further and say your bloodline is involved. Yeah. This thing is deeper than you thought it was. It's deeper than you thought it was. It's deeper than you thought. It's deeper than I thought it was. It's sure enough deeper. If I can borrow, Southern slang, sure enough deeper than I ever imagined it was. But the power of momentum means that we must look at all the varying laws, forces, particles, mechanics, sciences, theories that may or may not push, force, drive us to the result that we desire. Why do we keep building cars why do we keep building new cars? Because we found out something else. 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 You see. And then also, a lot of times it's all about, just making money. But back in the old days, cars didn't come out so fast. Now they're coming out so fast, so many different variations, it's hard to keep up. See, and that even is a momentum for the retention of a booming auto sales market. And we don't want to go below a certain threshold, so we want to hold what statistical information has proven the economy and the inflation can afford. The tolerance. When we look at the statistics, and maybe people buy cars every so many years and they trade them in every so many months, whatever the case may be, and we want to hold to that. They're not going to say, "Oh, we're gonna keep cars now for a little longer period." Give people a chance to get their monies together and save some, and now please, because that momentous build-up is holding up an economy, if you will. I don't know if you got that, but that's a mouthful right there. So man, I could go on and on. I think I'll continue to talk for another day about momentum. But listen, you have to go back and listen to this one and a lot of the stuff that I talk about again, because if you think that you have it in one take, you are absolutely out of your mind, because the mind can only retain a fourth, 25% of what is disseminated in any one setting. And I'm telling you that to build momentum, we got to have a dual conversation. And we could talk about what makes us feel good, but we also must talk about what will make us feel bad. We must talk about what may occur in our lives that just simulates what we have been through. And that's another thing we could talk about later, is that so many times we have simulated trials and tribulations. They're not really going on, but because they have elements that remind us of our past, those are clues. Those are clues to you that you need to deal with something. But because we're not a reflective people, we're not an introspective people, we're not a compassionate people, we're not an empathetic culture. We take everything face. You can't even play life straight up hardly anymore. You gotta dance around this and dance around that in order, and you gotta have, in other words, you gotta have wisdom to maneuver around, really, so that you can disseminate something worthy of entertainment, or inaugurating something in someone that would entertain and inaugurating something into their life to be better. So momentum, man. The power of it. And on the wings, should you be able to build momentum and maintain momentum on the wings of momentum, our resources. We'll talk about that next session. Thank you so much for joining us. Follow us again, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Don't forget that new website. Listen to the high broadcasting.
Listen to SIBN Radio.